Hello. You're on the Storm to Truth channel. Enjoy your watching. My name is Jack, and up until recently, I thought I had everything figured out. I'm 50 years old, been married for 27 years to my wife, Karen, who's 47. We've got 3 kids. Our son, Brandon, is 25, our daughter, Megan, is 20, and our youngest, Emily, is only 5. Yep, that's right. Had a third child at 45 when most of my friends were settling into early retirement plans. But hey, I've always liked to keep things interesting. Now, I don't want to brag, but for my age, I'm doing pretty well. Still got a full head of hair, though it's more salt than pepper now. Karen always said the gray made me look distinguished, and she wasn't the only one. I know women notice me, but I'm not the type to chase that kind of attention. I don't smoke, barely drink, and I've kept myself in shape. My marriage wasn't perfect, but I never thought it was broken. Up until recently, Karen and I had a solid routine. Intimacy was regular 3 or 4 times a week, mostly in the mornings when we were rested. Things were good between us, at least I thought they were. After 27 years together, you start to know someone inside and out. I knew what she liked, what she needed, and I made sure she got it. We didn't have any boundaries or taboos when it came to our private life. Everything was open, comfortable. It worked for us, or so I believed. I loved her. Never once did I stray, despite having the opportunity. I never wanted anyone else. Karen was mine. She was familiar, my partner in life. And for years, she gave me no reason to doubt that she felt the same. Then February came, and it felt like the universe had hit me with a freight train. It all started with a video. Of course, it was anonymous, a random message from a number I didn't recognize. It showed Karen in her office with her coworker, a guy named Mark. He's 6 years younger than her, 41, and apparently they'd been sneaking around since before Christmas. Maybe it started during their office holiday party, but does it even matter? I didn't know what to do at first. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. The worst part? They'd been caught on someone's cell phone in the middle of their little tryst. How stupid did they have to be? The door wasn't even closed all the way. That's how little they cared. My first thought was to confront her, but thankfully she wasn't home at the time. Otherwise, I don't know what I might have done. I'm not a violent man. I've never laid a hand on her. But the anger I felt was like nothing I'd ever experienced. I didn't want to hit her, but I sure wanted to scream, to demand why she would throw away everything we'd built. But instead, I cooled off, telling myself to think this through. The thing is, I knew there was no going back after this. I wasn't going to stay with her, no matter what excuses she had. But I wasn't ready to blow up my life just yet. I had other things to figure out first. Our property, my business. So I made a decision. I'd deal with the divorce later, but first, I had to secure everything we had built over the years. For me, and for our kids. After getting that video, I knew I had to play it smart. Going after Mark or blowing up on Karen wasn't going to fix anything. So I did the only thing I could. I pretended I didn't know. I kept my cool, which, looking back, I'm surprised I managed. Every time I looked at her, it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. But I had a plan. First thing I did was start preparing myself financially. I didn't want her to take half of everything, especially not my business. I had built that company from the ground up. Over the years, I'd worked long hours, sacrificed weekends and vacations, and it was all finally paying off. There was no way I was going to lose it because of her betrayal. I sold my car first, under the excuse that I wanted an upgrade. Karen didn't think anything of it. She even seemed excited about the prospect of getting a new one for herself. She had no idea what I was doing behind the scenes. Next, I sold her car, claiming I found a great deal on a better one. She trusted me, believed every word. That's the thing about Karen, she never saw this coming. She thought she had me wrapped around her finger, that I was clueless. But I wasn't clueless. Not anymore. By May, I had liquidated most of our assets. The firm? I filed for bankruptcy and took the remaining money out of the accounts. I paid off my employees, shut everything down, and started the process of reopening the same company under my mother's name. My mother, who's 74 years old, but still sharp as ever, became the face of my business. Karen knew nothing. She was just waiting for her new car, completely unaware that I was cutting her out of everything. We also had a 2-bedroom apartment in a new building, which was under both of our names. But the real jewel, The one thing I knew she'd fight for was the country house. That house meant everything to her. We had spent years planning it, from the garden to the gazebo, the pool, and the flower beds. But here's the kicker. The land belonged to my family. It had been passed down from my grandparents to my mother. And the house? It was technically hers too, since I never transferred it into my name. Karen could cry all she wanted, but legally, that house was out of her reach. Funny how things work out. By the end of it, I had stripped her of everything without her even realizing it. It was cruel, maybe, but after what she did, I couldn't find it in myself to care. The affair had been bad enough, but the way she lied to my face every day, it broke something inside me. And even though I hadn't yet confronted her, I could tell she was starting to sense that something was off. I stopped being affectionate. No more kisses, no more hugs, and definitely no more intimacy. Every time she asked why, I'd just say I wasn't feeling well. She'd even suggest go to the doctor, genuinely worried, staring at me with those caring eyes that once made me feel so loved. But this time they made me sick. How could she look at me like that after everything she'd done? I wanted to call her out right then, but I didn't. Not yet. By the time May rolled around, things were different between us, and Karen knew it. She couldn't put her finger on what had changed, but she definitely noticed. She'd ask me if everything was okay, and I'd dodge the question, acting distracted or busy. I kept telling myself to hold out a little longer, to finalize everything before dropping the bombshell on her. It was harder than I thought it'd be. Every time she'd ask me why I wasn't kissing her or being affectionate, my gut would twist. I'm just tired, I'd say, or I'm not feeling great. And she bought it at first, but Karen's not stupid. Eventually, she started to ask more pointed questions. Why hadn't I been myself lately? Why was I avoiding her? Why did I seem distant? I could see the fear in her eyes, and honestly, I think part of her was starting to put it together. Maybe she thought I was having an affair. Maybe she figured I was angry about something at work. Whatever she thought, it was eating away at her, but she couldn't quite confront it. As for me, I was waiting for the right moment. It was all about timing. I had to get the company squared away, make sure the house was locked down under my mom's name, and then I'd deal with Karen. My plan was working, and she was none the wiser. Well, at least that's what I thought. One night toward the end of April, we had the conversation. It wasn't something I planned, but Karen finally reached her breaking point. I remember coming home from a long day and seeing her pacing in the living room. She looked, well, desperate. Honestly, her voice was shaky when she spoke. "Jack," she said, her hands trembling a little. "What's going on with you? You've been so distant. Did I do something wrong?" I could feel the moment coming, like a wave about to crash over me. I knew I could keep playing dumb, keep pushing it off, but the time had come. I pulled out my phone, opened up the video that had been burning a hole in my mind for months, and handed it to her. She looked confused at first, then she pressed play. Her eyes widened, and I watched the color drain from her face as she realized what she was seeing. The video wasn't long, but it was enough. Enough to destroy everything. Her and Mark, her so-called colleague, caught in the act. Karen dropped to her knees, clutching my legs, sobbing uncontrollably. "I'm sorry, Jack. I'm so sorry," she cried, tears streaming down her face. She was grabbing at me, pleading for forgiveness. It was a mistake. I didn't know what I was doing. "Please, I'm sorry." I stood there, staring down at her. I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt nothing, just a cold, hollow emptiness. "Why?" I asked. "Why did you do it? What was missing?" She couldn't answer me. She just kept crying, kept begging for another chance, but there was no fixing this. Not for me. In that moment, everything hit her. The realization that her perfect little world was crashing down. Our son had already distanced himself from her, and our eldest daughter, Megan, was torn between the two of us, struggling with how to react. And then there was Emily, our little girl, who had no idea what was going on or why Mommy and Daddy weren't acting the same anymore. Seeing Karen on her knees like that, begging and crying, it was surreal. This woman, who I'd spent almost 3 decades of my life with, who I thought I knew better than anyone, was now completely shattered before me. And I wasn't sure if it was guilt for the affair or fear of losing everything she had. But as much as I wanted answers, I didn't get them. Her sobbing apologies were just empty words to me. It was a mistake, she kept repeating. I didn't know what I was doing. How could she not know? How could she throw away everything we'd built for some office fling? I didn't believe she didn't know what she was doing. She knew. She just didn't expect to get caught. I stepped back, shaking her off my legs, and she looked up at me, desperation in her eyes. What now? I asked. You've destroyed this, Karen. There's no fixing it. She tried to convince me otherwise, but I wasn't having it. I'd already made up my mind. This marriage was over. I just hadn't told her yet. You need to think about our family, she pleaded, tears running down her face. Please, Jack. We can work through this. I love you. That's the thing about people. They always say they love you when they're backed into a corner. Where was that love when she was sneaking around with Mark? Where was that love when she was lying to me every single day? I couldn't even look at her. You say you love me now, I replied coldly. But love isn't supposed to hurt like this. I turned and walked away, leaving her sobbing on the floor. And you know what? I didn't feel a single shred of sympathy. I'd given her everything, and she'd thrown it all away. In the days that followed, things only got worse. Karen tried to patch things up with our son, Brandon, but he wasn't having it. He didn't want anything to do with her. Megan, on the other hand, was stuck in the middle, not knowing which side to take. She was hurt by what her mother had done, but she didn't want to completely cut her off either. As for Emily, our little girl, she was blissfully unaware. Too young to understand what was happening, but I could tell she sensed something wasn't right. And that made it harder for me. Emily adored Karen. She was too young to see her mother's mistakes, and every time she ran up to Karen for a hug, my heart broke a little more. I knew I couldn't stay in this marriage, but how was I supposed to break my little girl's heart? That's the thing, no matter how much Karen had hurt me, it was our children who would suffer the most. I could handle the pain. I could handle the betrayal. But how was I supposed to explain to Emily why Mommy and Daddy weren't going to be together anymore? Karen, of course, tried everything she could to make me change my mind. She promised to fix things, to go to therapy, to do whatever it took. But I was done. There was no coming back from this. She could cry, apologize, beg, but none of it mattered anymore. The woman I had married was gone. And the person left in her place? I didn't know who she was anymore. As much as I wanted to just walk away from it all, the reality of our life together wasn't that simple. There was still the matter of the house, the property, and of course the kids. Karen's tearful apologies didn't change the fact that we were about to go through a messy divorce. And while she might have thought she could cry her way out of it, I had other plans. By this point, I had already secured most of the assets. The cars were sold, the company was transferred, and all that was left was to officially file for divorce. I was waiting for the right time to tell her, to let her know that I wasn't just angry. I was done. Completely done. She didn't know how much I'd been planning behind the scenes. She thought she'd still come out of this with half of everything. But she didn't realize I'd been one step ahead the whole time. The country house was a big part of it. I knew she loved that place more than anything. We'd build it together, piece by piece. Every flower, every tree in the garden had been carefully chosen. The pool, the gazebo, we dreamed of those things when we were young, and we finally made it happen. But the land? That was my family's. It belonged to my grandmother, and when she passed, my mother inherited it. Legally, Karen had no claim to it. The house itself? Sure, we had built it together, but it wasn't in her name. It never had been. That house was the one thing I knew would break her. She would fight for it, and I had no intention of letting her have it. Not after everything she'd done. As the days passed, she grew more suspicious. I wasn't affectionate anymore, and I certainly wasn't sharing any of my plans with her. She'd ask questions. Why aren't we getting the new car? What's going on with your business? Why are you acting like this? I could see the panic starting to set in, and I knew it was only a matter of time before she put the pieces together. One night, she came to me with tears in her eyes again. Jack, what are we going to do? We need to talk. You haven't been yourself, and I feel like everything is falling apart. Can we at least try to fix this? I didn't even flinch. We'll talk, I said calmly. But it's not going to be the conversation you're hoping for. She didn't understand what I meant, not yet. But she would. Soon. The next day, I called my lawyer and started the divorce proceedings. I made it clear that I wasn't interested in mediation or reconciliation. I wanted out, and I wanted to protect what was mine. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, and I knew she would fight me for everything, especially the house. But I had the law on my side. The land belonged to my family, and she had no legal right to it. She still didn't know about the company. She had no idea that I'd already liquidated it and transferred the assets. She was too focused on the house, thinking she could hold on to that one piece of our life. But that was the thing. There wasn't anything left for her to hold on to. Not the house, not the cars, not the business, and not me. I was done playing the fool. I was done pretending like we could ever go back to the way things were. That's the end of the story. Thank you very much for watching. If you're interested in something, leave a comment under the video, like it, and subscribe to the channel so that you don't lose it. New videos every day.